Valencia circuit, just outside the city of Valencia on the Costa Dorado in Spain, just about 10 miles from the coast. The weather is beautiful for those down on the beaches and indeed for those out in the grandstands here. There's a 120,000 seat capacity grandstand, runs all the way around one side of the amphitheatre that is this setting for this brand new racetrack. And you can see it there in the background, this mass of concrete seating built for the Motorcycle Grand Prix, which came here last year, the inaugural race, and a smattering of spectators. I'm joined in the booth, at least for the time being, by the driver of the number 14 car that sits on pole position, Jamie Campbell-Walter. His teammate Julian Bailey is starting the race. And Jamie, at this sort of stage, Julian's seen it all before. I don't suppose he'll be suffering any kind of butterflies at all.
Well, I mean, first race of the season, obviously, we were both saying earlier that feels all a bit strange. We haven't had a race this year. Quite a few guys in the race have been to Daytona, Sebring, because the American Series has started. So, yeah, there's a few butterflies, obviously, new car for the season, and hopefully we'll be all right.
Well, now, the cars were fastest in free practice. You were split in qualifying by this all-Dutch-driven Marcos. Is that where you see, Viper, is that where you see the main challenge to Lister coming from?
For sure. I mean, this car is an ex-Orica car that won the championship last year. David Hart and Mike Hasemans were actually my teammates at Zolder last year, and Hockenheim. And Mike, who's starting the race now in the Red Viper, is a very good driver and has proved it yesterday in qualifying.
Well, they broke their gearbox in the morning warm-up, but he seems to have third gear, fourth gear as well. Julian Bailey gets the hammer down on the 7-litre V12 Jaguar that sits ahead of him in the Lister Storm. He's going wide to the outside as Hasemans tries to fend off the second of the Listers, and it looks as though it's going to be a Lister 1-2. Jamie sitting here with his thumbs up. It is first and second as they come out of the first turn. Peter Hardman, the British driver, in the second of the Lister Storms, out dragging that Red Viper, and that was really very much part of Julian's plan, I know. I don't suppose he particularly wanted to have coached Peter, but he would certainly like to put the second Lister between himself and the car that he clearly regards as the main threat here, which is the fastest of the Vipers. And that's not a bad deal either, because this is a brand new car. The team have only had it under a month. The team has only been together around a month or so. So it's a well-known car, but not particularly to them. They're doing a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, Peter for sure is an experienced driver. He's the best driver in this team. You know, he's proved himself. He's done a good job in qualifying. He's unfortunate not to get the second on the grid, but he flat-spotted a set of tyres which didn't give him a second run. So, you know, he'll be pleased to be up there in second and learn a few tricks off Julian.
Well, he's sharing that car with German driver Nicolas Springer, and they both raced here in a Spanish GT round towards the end of last year, so they'll have a feel for the circuit, maybe in slightly different temperatures, but at least it's not as new to them as it was to yourself and Julian. You can see the swarm of Vipers behind, the yellow and white machines of Paul Belmondo Racing. The 12 car there is for Paul Belmondo himself and Vincent Voss, and that's looking like a very useful combination already. That team has got quicker and stronger over the last 2 years of FIA GT involvement, and they look very much to be a regular threat. Behind them, the cars carrying the 1 and 2 are of Chamberlain Racing. Hugh Chamberlain's team finished runner-up to Orica in last year's championship, and with the defending champions not defending, that means Chamberlain's cars get first and second numbers. Nianarim, the Portuguese driver, we saw flat spotting a tyre right in the opening lap, which won't help him too much. He's starting the 1 car. Tony Seiler, the Swiss, sharing with Walter Brunn. He's starting the number 2 machine. And Julian Bailey at the moment starting to ease away a fraction from Peter Hardman. You can see that behind them, Belmondo, Anarim, and then the Gosselin car, which started in 7th position. That's the second of the Paul Belmondo cars, and that's a new driver lineup. Gosselin sharing with ex-Formula 3000 driver Boris de Richebourg, 22 years old, never driven a sports car before, and managed to get himself into this drive with the team quite late on in the winter. He's done 2.5 years of Formula 3000, went last year to Indy Lights and decided that it was rather on the dangerous side for a single-seater driver, and now coming into the FIA GT Championship, perhaps having a readjustment in his career path. But he's certainly shown a good turn of speed, and interesting to talk to Walter Brunn last night about the Viper that he's driving, Hugh Chamberlain's car. It's more than, in fact, closer to 30 years than 20 since he's driven a front-engine car. The last one was a BMW CSL lightweight 3-litre car, the Batmobile, in the mid-70s, in the heydays of those cars in saloon car racing. But he's saying, Jamie, that the Viper feels very much like a mid-engine car. It really is a racing chassis as opposed to feeling like it's got a big lump of metal up front, even though it has. Is that the same kind of thing with the Lister? I mean, you've driven TVRs in Britain, you've driven the Listers here, you're used to a big front-engine car, but nowadays, does it really feel quite that nose-heavy?
I mean, the Lister has a 50-50 weight distribution, so the engine actually sits alongside our left thigh, you know, the two cylinders at the back of the engine is beside us, so it's not actually a front-engine car, really. The engine is in the middle of the car, and no, the cars now have improved so much from driving the GT1 car last year to this car. It's not that far away, you know, 3-4 seconds off at Donington last week when we were testing there, and the new cars proved very good. I mean, it's obviously a homologated car, so we couldn't change it much, but what we have done is we've reduced the weight, got a little bit more downforce and better centre of gravity, and the car's performing well, as you can see from Julian pulling out.
Well, Julie was saying it would take a couple of laps to get the tyres up to speed, and it looks like they're at that sort of situation. 12 car here hanging on pretty well, so you've got the two Vipers for company here as we sit and look at it. Julian, though, I'm sure will be pretty relaxed at the moment, so we'll just sit and watch and enjoy as he continues to pile on the pressure. Julian Bailey leads across the line at the end of the third lap of the opening round of the FIA GT Championship for the year 2000 in the Lister Storm that took pole position, and changing their fortunes from qualifying, jumping from third on the grid into second place into the first corner has gone the car number 15, the sister car. Peter Hardman starting that and getting ahead of Mike Hazelman's right from the word go in the red Viper. And it's Vipers behind the Listers. Hazelman's in third, Vincent Voss in fourth place in the number 12 Paul Belmondo racing car. Fifth place is Nianarim in Chamberlain Viper number 1. Sixth place Boris de Richebourg in the second of the Belmondo racing Vipers. And then seventh place before you get anything that's not a Chrysler, but it's another front engine car. It's the big 5.9 Chevy V8 hauling Coroy's Marcos along in seventh place. And behind them, well, the rest of the GT2 cars, and we're starting with the best of the Porsches, Jürgen von Gartzen in Franz Conrad's car. Conrad doing a lot of development work on his own machine as ever. They are running, though, without the rear under tray, which they tried in practice this morning in the warm-up. They found has given them a lot more downforce at the rear and a better stability at the rear. So because Conrad has moved the turbos from outside the engine's bank of cylinders on the flat six, the turbos normally sit right behind the cylinder heads. Both of his turbos are repositioned in the crankshaft center line, so where you would expect to see the rear number plate if you looked at the back of the Porsche, it means that they're subject very much to overheating. They could do 2 or 3 laps before they start to boil the temperatures in the Conrad cars, so they're running without their rear diffuser. So they get better power as they get cleaner air from the scoops on the rear wing of the GT2 Porsche, but they have to sacrifice a little bit of rear end stability. Franz Conrad and Bob Wallach are no shirkers when it comes to pushing hard in a Porsche. But Jamie, it is starting to look as though the GT2 Porsche, as a competitive force in this championship, either needs some help from the factory or possibly from the regulations. Now, I know that's the last thing that Lawrence Pierce would like to see you agreeing to, but for the health of the championship, you need to have as many cars really possible to win a race as you can.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, though, that Franz Conrad is the only one that's got his car sorted out. I mean, he's worked really hard, and as we saw in qualifying, he's up there, not far away. So is it a case of the Porsche needs more power, or is it a case of the other teams that need to sort their cars out? You know, we've all done a lot of development, everyone works very hard, but suddenly just to be given, oh, well, there you go, there's a bigger restrictor, is the easy way out, you know. What I think some of the teams should pull their fingers out and work harder on their cars like Franz has.
Well, it's very true. Conrad's always been very keen on developing his own cars. He does it in Europe, he does it in the States. And to a degree, yes, you're right, early in the season, you know, it's very early to be thinking about saying, well, the Porsche is a written-off deal. This is a tight and twisty racetrack, but perhaps there will be other tracks that suit it slightly better compared to the heavier cars that are ahead of it at the moment. As you say, they didn't fare too badly in qualifying, and if they can sort out their overheating problem with the rear diffuser in place, maybe next weekend at Estoril, then again we could see a very different nature racetrack to this. We could see a very different look to the Porsches. Concentrating with the cameras at the moment on a driver who will be racing at home there at Portugal next weekend, Nianarim, the Portuguese driver, the only one of Hugh Chamberlain's squad from last year that has carried on into this season. He will share with the young South African Stephen Watson. Later on, Tony Seiler stays with the team, having said that nobody apart from Nee Anerim stayed with them. He stays with the team and shares with Walterbrum, but quickest lap then on that turn around the track for the 5th place Viper of Nee Anerim, and he is clearly feeling the pressure from Boris de Richebourg right behind him. And the de Richebourg car, well, for a man in his first GT race, he's obviously got plenty to learn about how the car will go off. He's never done a race anything like as long as the stints that he's going to have to do now, because we're expecting cars to last an hour between fuel stops. And so Boris de Richebourg is certainly on a pretty steep learning curve, and under pressure now from a man who really knows this series and really knows his car. Koreuser with the Marcos hounding the back of the 11 car there. And Koreuser, again, we're talking about developing your cars. Koreuser just works non-stop, as much as anybody else on his cars. And I have to say, in fairness to any of his teammates, nobody can make it go quite as quickly as he can.
No, he's well in tune with the car. He's it's like a suit to him, and you know, again, he's another car. It's a new car. He's just recently been fully homologated by the FIA, and it's good for him. You know, he's worked hard, and I'm sure that he'll, with a bit more development, he'll be up there as well.
Well, Julian Bailey's fastest lap at the moment on the 4th lap of race, 1 minute 33.9. This morning he did 1:33.5. That was with a fuel load as well, but it was a little bit cooler. Where are you kind of expecting the race laps to settle down? High 33s, low 34s, or a little bit
I think
slower than that?
There was a bit of a panic on the grid, actually, because Julian had forgotten to put his water bottle in beside him on the seat, and he's screaming down the radio to Lawrence to get someone to run up, so luckily we got him a drink. So hopefully he'll go a bit quicker than without the drink. And as you say, he's done a 33.9. He's only 3/4 tenths off what he did in the warm-up with full tank. So I think the tyres are good. I noticed on the first couple of laps he had quite a bit of understeer. That's what happens with the full tanks. The rears come in very quickly here and the fronts don't. So I think now the fronts are in, this is probably the best lap that he's going to do, and in a couple more laps I think we'll be hitting traffic anyway. So I think the race will settle into mid-34s, high 34s.
Well, the last car on the leaderboard at the moment in 30th place is Jean-Louis Marie-Laribiere's 911 GT3R. He's 1 minute and 17 seconds behind the race leader at the moment. And as you say, with Julian doing 1:34, 1:35 laps, it's not going to take more than a couple of laps before you start getting into traffic. Now, that seemed to be a little bit of a problem during qualifying, but obviously much more so when you're a dozen laps into a race rhythm. How much does that upset a driver, where you're having to suddenly change your braking and turning and points and so on, can't get on the throttle because you're following something that's really, you're not in a position yet to pass it?
Yeah, I mean, this particular track, it's the first time we've had a race here. It's very tight and twisty. It's very difficult to overtake, even if it is a much slower car. And yesterday, Friday in testing and qualifying, it was tricky with the traffic. And with the GT3 cars being 13, 14 seconds slower, it's there's some tricky blind braking points where you're not quite sure. It's the sort of middle of the road, and you're not quite sure, and it does upset your rhythm. But it's something that we've got to get on with and just, you know, hope for the best. And I think our brief from Lawrence this morning is be careful with the traffic. Let's not ruin the race just because we've had our nose chopped off.
Well, we're expecting to see a bit of inter-Nissan rivalry between some of the Vipers, and that's what we're getting at the moment. Boris de Richebourg now clearly feeling that he's got the measure of not only his Viper, but that of Nee Anerim, having a couple of very good looks there coming down the straight. Anerim covering desperately, and as a result, it seems that de Richebourg sort of outbraked himself a little bit into the first corner. He's now got to worry about the Marcos. Further back, we're looking here at the two Pennzoil cars in the 911 GT3R category, the NGT series. Now, these two brand new cars, the team have only had these for about 3 weeks, and the 2 days of testing they did here in Spain, rather than testing at a wet English circuit, they came to a circuit in Spain here, just up the road, and it rained for 2 days, so they have spent the last 2 days of practice and qualifying trying to work on the setup. None of them have ever driven the car before, apart from Michel Ligonnet, who's the teammate in the second of the cars. So 3 drivers really at a loss to what to do, and in that sort of situation, Michel Neugarten rather in the 51 car, he's the only one who's got the experience here. Vallander, Nern and Smith, the 3 drivers who have come over from the British series predominantly, really struggling to find their feet, and as a result they're not going to be particularly competitive in this class at the moment.
Hello?
Darling, it's me. Be an angel and get me some things at the airport. I need some more makeup and some perfume.
Darling, I have to return the rental car. Hand in the keys, wait to pay. There just won't be time. You're a car. You rent a lot more than a car.
Superbike is back. Big brutes. They may be production bikes, but they have enough grunt to scorch the tarmac. Carl Fogarty won the last 2 titles on the Ducati. Can the lad from Lancashire make it a hat trick? Could be tough. Colin Edwards' new Honda is lightning quick. The Superbike World Championship live from Kyalami in South Africa. Sunday at 9 CET, 11:45 and 16:30.
With Shell Advanced Motorcycle Oils. Protection under extreme conditions.
60 hours of ice-cold pleasure. The Figure Skating World Championships. The entire competition is live on Eurosport. The brilliance and the bouquets. The Figure Skating World Championships. Live from Monday at 1400 and 1900 CET. 60 hours of ice-cold pleasure. If you're a Formula One fan, answer the following question. Who recently won the Brazilian Grand Prix? Each week, you could win a video game station with a Jordan Grand Prix official racing wheel and a Formula One simulation. So grab your phone now, and good luck.
Looking at the 2 Pennzoil Porsches in the GT3 category, British viewers will be familiar with the name Magnus Wallander in the G-Force team, and so too is Julian Bailey. You'll have, and in fact, particularly Jamie Campbell-Walter, seemed to be you that always had his headlights trying to melt the paint off the back bumper of the Lister last year.
Yeah, there's a super Swede. Magnus is, we had some good races last year in the British, and, good luck to him. He seems to... He's getting to grips with it. I say old Suggy in the MK car is doing a bit better than him, but obviously he's been to Daytona with the car, so he's done a few more laps than Magnus. But, they're both running 3rd and 4th, and it's good the British contingent are over here mixing it with the best of them.
Certainly right, and Robert Nern in the other car as well, in right behind them, Linus Sturm. And the car you can just catch a glimpse of in front is, in fact, Tim Sugden's car, as ever sharing with Steve O'Rourke, as ever run by Michael Caine GTC team, the MK racing operation. As you say, they've been to Daytona with the car, so they have got a bit of experience there. And they, like the other NGT class cars, looking at not quite being able to make it through on one fuel stop. They reckon there's going to be a 20 lap or so splash and dash, so they may need to take on another 40 or so litres of fuel in the midpoint in the race. And the Sugden plan, at least, is for him to do a full tank of fuel and then take the splash and dash on, then hand over the car for the last full tank of fuel to his partner Steve O'Rourke, and he will go out with new tyres. Continuing this battle here with Nianarim defending 5th position from Boris de Richebourg for the last 9 laps, and finally, as they go on to lap 10, de Richebourg makes a decisive move down the inside. All look very calm and controlled there, Jamie, but both cars moving around a little bit. Wasn't an awful lot of room to play with between them. Nianarim, I think, finally had to give him the roof. Boris started the move early enough there to make the hole, I think.
Yeah, it's into the first corner there, which is the fastest corner on the circuit. It was about 95 mile an hour minimum speed. For us anyway, probably not for the Vipers, but it's very dusty on the inside. We can see it here on the shot now where the Porsches are turning in. It's very dusty and slippery, so that's why the car would have been moving about. And well done to him. Amarin's not the easiest guy to overtake. Jules had a bit of a problem with him last year at Hockenheim, and they had it coming together, and normally Nee's not so forgiving, but he seemed to give him the place there.
Well, Boris de Richebourg recording his best lap of the race on that last lap. So he has certainly picked up his speed as a result, managed to get clearly pretty good toe off Nianarim down the straight. Nianarim now with his mirrors full of the Rainbow Warrior Viper, Marcos behind him. Julian Bailey, his lap speed dropping down a little bit, as you're just pointing out there on the monitors, 135.9, and as you again are pointing out on the other monitor, yes, we already saw the 11 car here catching the last 2 of the 911s at the tail of the field. So Julian is several ahead of that and working his way through traffic. Now he's dropped about a second or so on the lap, so that's a pretty standard amount of time to lose as you're catching people.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, you don't want to have your nose chopped off by one of the guys. Some of the guys at the back are, amateur drivers having a nice day out, and sometimes they're concentrating on what they're doing and not looking in the mirrors. But I'm sure Jules is, we haven't seen him for a while, but I'm sure he's got his headlights on, and he'll be making his way through.
Trying to carve his way through traffic. Well, news just coming through on the timing and scoring monitors of the sister car of this machine, the number 10 car, Paul Belmondo Racing's third effort, which got a lot of camera time yesterday, largely facing in the wrong direction. It's being driven by Guy Martinol and Jean-Claude Lanier, and they've been given a stop-and-go penalty, so they will also be dropping towards the back of the field. At the moment, they're running in 12th position. They're going to drop right down the order with that, and at this early stage of the race, they can't really do much to negate that, can they? They can't sensibly take fuel or tyres or anything else, so that is just a blow that will push them right off the pace. They're both drivers new to the series, and both drivers really new to the car, and quite frankly, it showed throughout practice, but again, perhaps just an elementary mistake there. You can see the two Chamberlain Vipers here, nose to tail, with not much room for a Marcos behind them. Coroy's is in the middle, and as you said, he's trying to move around a lot now to make sure that Nianarim is looking in both mirrors at the same time to try and unsettle him. How much does that actually affect you? Again, you've been in that situation towards the close of British GT races, particularly in 1999. How much can you concentrate on where you're going, and how much do you have to watch the guy behind just in case he suddenly appears there?
What happens is you see him in your mirrors, obviously, and you start to brake later and later and later into the corners, and what happens is you basically start coming out slower out of the corners. So it's very important. The best thing in the world really to do is to knock your mirror away so you can't see them, and then you concentrate on going forwards rather than backwards. But you can see Cor's pushing pretty quickly. There's a right-hander, I saw him coming out the last lap, but he was on the exit of the curve. Here it is, actually. Yep. And you can see him kicking up the dust. So he's pushing the car quite hard, but there again, as we were talking earlier about how the car is a suit to him, and he can do that. He can chuck the car about, but we see he's lost a little bit of time here to the Chamberlain car.
Interesting to see him passed as well into the first turn by the number 2 car. Tony Sider, the Swiss driver, went and mirrored the move that Paul Belmondo made on Nianarim, went down to the inside, got cleanly inside Cor, but as you said, carried too much speed into the corner as a result, and was just dead on the exit. He had to obviously get out of the throttle to make sure he made it round, and Coroy's on a better line in and out of the corner, just came straight by him. There you are, Julian with the headlights ablaze, as predicted. Right behind him, that second set of headlights, I guess that's got to be Peter coming through the traffic as well.
It's amazing, our headlights are actually working this year. I mean, last year we always had one headlight after about 3 laps, so Jules and I have nagged Lawrence to make sure that they both stay on for the whole race, so he's worked really hard to get them nice and bright for us, so well, Lawrence, good to see that.
Lawrence clearly doesn't believe that you're going to need that until darkness, and that's not going to happen until Le Mans. No. He's going to save bulbs until then. Okay, so Julian Bailey comfortably leading now. His margin over Peter Hardman 5 seconds, and that's remaining relatively stable over the last 2 or 3 laps. Dozen laps in, here is your race leader. Peter Hardman in second place in the second of the Lister Storms. In third place, still Mike Hazemans, and he is 3/4 of a second behind Peter Hardman, so there's really no rest at all for the number 15 car. Hazemans there to keep him honest. Vincent Voss in the number 12 machine is 12 seconds behind that little battle for second place. And there you go, Julian Bailey's fastest lap being shown there. Well, he's got into clean traffic again, or clean air again for a moment. This will probably last him a lap or so. When he's presumably had to go offline a little bit to get past slower cars, which, as they should do, are staying on the line to give him some idea of what their intentions are. How much are you picking up on the track here in terms of sand and dirt offline, and how long does it take to get the tyres back to the way you like them?
Yeah, I mean, you do lose a bit of grip, but a couple of corners and it's back in.
Okay, so as Julian Bailey and Peter Hardman continue first and second, well, we're thinking about taking a commercial break, but I think we might need to sit and watch this battle develop. Peter Hardman offline and defending in the middle of, well, not quite in the middle of the racetrack, but certainly making it very clear indeed to Mike Hazemans that he's going to have to work very hard indeed to get by. And Mike Hazemans is going to work very hard indeed. He moves up into second place. Well, he sowed the seeds going into that first corner. Look at the big big darkies, the black stripes there, as Peter Hardman comes out, having gone in a little too deep trying to defend there. Big boot of throttle to get it round. Nicely made move, though. I mean, Hasemans has really looked for the gap and made it there for himself.
Yeah, what he did was he forced, on the main straight there, he forced Peter to defend slightly, and so Peter would have been concentrating on braking late, got a bad exit from the first corner, and Mike pulled a move off in the inside in the second corner. Very good. Yeah, he's a very good driver. You know, when he was our teammate last year, he was very quick to quicken the Lister. So, and this is a good car, you know, and I think he'll be good.
Certainly seems to be very much the front runner of the Vipers, which perhaps I think is a surprise to everybody, considering how little time they've had working with the car. However, there it is. That is second place at the moment, and with some 30 minutes of the race nearly gone, I'm going to say cheerio to Jamie. Thanks very much for coming up.
Yeah.
He's got his cool suit on and his drinks bottle ready to go. And first and third now at the moment for the Lister Storm. So, Jamie, thank you very much indeed for coming up and chatting to us. So we wish you the best of luck, and go and give Julian our best regards.
I will do. Thanks, bye.
So first of the pit stoppers, right on the 1 hour mark, and in comes the car from second place. Mike Hasemans and David Hart waiting for him. Out goes Cor Oyser's teammate Christian Van in the Marcos, the first of the front-running cars to stop, and that car came in from 9th position. Julian Bailey is coming in now. He wanted to come in front of the Viper before the Viper came in, so he didn't have to go round him. He wanted Peter Hardman then to be in the pit stall with the potential perhaps to hold up the Viper, and that's what's happening. In fact, Hardman it is who comes in, not the race leader. So second place and now third place car in the race, and Hardman's going to have the slow pit stop. Well, Julian Bailey then deciding on the radio with Lawrence Pierce that they would stay out and use up all their fuel before they came in, and hope to avoid some of the confusion in the pit lane. And Peter Hardman's car there, Nicholas Springer in that multicoloured helmet, looks like a sort of multicoloured jigsaw. It's a variety of different flowers and petals on it. He is ready to take over. Peter Hardman shuts the door on him, makes double sure it's shut, makes double sure his drinks bottle is fully connected, and Julian Bailey is coming down the pit road. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, it's a very long pit road, over 800 metres this pit road, from the far end where he hits the 60 km/h speed restriction all the way down to the Lister pit in garage number 1. But Julian Bailey will get there, I'm sure, and find that it is not free. It is still occupied. Peter Hardman still at rest. Julian Bailey, the number 1 car, coming in now, and that is not the way Bailey would have wanted it. Officials in the way and everything, and they will have to drag the car back, and that is exactly what Julian Bailey was saying he wanted specifically to avoid. Jamie Campbell-Walter helps the crew to push it back. They can refuel the car only, engine off, and then they have to change the tyres, so it's never a short stop. Out has gone the Hasemans and Hart car. David Hart now, rather, at the wheel instead of Mike Hasemans, and well, they take over temporarily at least as the race leaders. Arms race behind the 14 car. That means the 15 car should be going out. Jamie Campbell-Walter trying to get his head into the cockpit now. In comes the number 12 car. This was the car that's in 4th place, Vincent Vos, and he should hand that car over to his teammate Paul Belmondo. Expect also to see the 11 car coming in soon. That is the Boris de Richebourg car, which has moved up now into 2nd place as Vos came in from 3rd. As Vos, in fact, came in from 2nd place, de Richebourg in 2nd place now as Vos has pulled in. But that will all, of course, jiggle itself around. The only real non-change is that Jean-Denis Delatraz's car is in the pits and has been for the last 24 laps of 38-lap race distance. And Nianarim's car has gone out of the pits. So it's 8 laps down. The Chamberlain crew have clearly fixed whatever the problem was. There is Jamie Campbell-Walter, who joined us for the start of the race here in the Eurosport booth, and right behind him Tim Sugden. And Sugden, for now the next half hour or so, will concentrate on Magnus Wallander, the man right behind him, and the battle for the NGT class. Don't worry too much about where the Lister is. In 2 or 3 corners, Jamie will be long gone from that battle, but right at the moment, as he waits for the tyres to come in on full tanks of fuel, with Sugden absolutely at race pace, and for the first time all race without Michel Legonnet right ahead of him, Jamie Campbell-Walter being harassed by the GT3R. Well, here is the man who at the moment is out on the racetrack first. The race leader, David Hart, needs to avoid doing silly things like that if he's going to stay in contention. He got away with that one out of the final turn by the skin of his teeth. His first lap at racing speed with full tanks in that car after the pit stop, and just going in a fraction too hot into the long, long, long final corner here. Well, he does need desperately to avoid that. Boris de Richebourg, the race leader at the moment, showing the number 14 car in second place. Here is Hugh Chamberlain's number 2 machine at rest. Tony Seiler and Walter Brunn, the drivers here. Seiler started, and that, by my reckoning, although we didn't really see into it, makes Walter Brunn currently at the wheel of that car. So here comes the 14 machine, and as they start to cross the line again, we will start to see the order settle down a little bit. Well, the 11 car of Boris de Richebourg being shown as the race leader by 43.2 seconds. He is yet to stop the 11 machine. In the pit at the moment, his teammates, the number 12 car, Voss handing over to Belmondo. Tony Seiler and his teammate Walter Brunn have done their change in the number 2 Chamberlain Viper. They were shown as 6th place when they came in. At the moment, we're seeing de Richebourg leading, yet to stop. So the order should be then Bailey in Campbell Walter in 2nd place, 43 seconds behind. In 3rd place, Wolfgang Kaufmann, 8.8 seconds behind, but they have yet to stop in the number 3 Porsche. And Mike Haseman's being shown in 4th place, 12.5 behind Kaufmann, and that makes him 20 seconds behind Bailey. And Campbell Walter's machine, the number 14 car, once it all settles itself down. Well, still the number 11 car has yet to stop. So Boris de Richebourg at the moment running long, long, long on fuel, past the hour mark by some 6 minutes now from the start of the race. And he is really extending his run in this car. He's gone very, very well indeed in the number 11 machine. No reason why he shouldn't. But after the changes, I think if Jamie Campbell-Walter can avoid riding too hard over the curbs there, he should be the race leader. Campbell-Walter goes safely past Hugh Chamberlain's number 2 machine, and that is the Seiler and Brunn machine, as Boris de Richebourg continues to stay out there 40 laps into the opening round of the FIA GT Series for the year 2000. Pit stops underway. More action live on Eurosport in live at the circuit of the Community of Valencia. The opening round of the FIA GT Championship for the new millennium is now, well, 1 hour and 10 minutes old, and we're just seeing the first of the pit stops. And the car that leads has not yet stopped. And it's gone now it has now come into the pits. So the number 11 car of Gosselin and de Richebourg at the helm. The Viper has come down into the Belmondo Racing pit finally. The 12 car, the team owner's car, stopped first. Vincent Voss handing over to Paul Belmondo himself. They are now being shown in 5th position. And Boris de Richebourg coming in to hand over that number 11 car. He's done a superb opening stint in that car, not only on the pace, but also really eked out the fuel. How that will pan out later in the race, well, remains to be seen. Most of the other front runners stopped round about the hour mark. Surprised to see that Julian Bailey didn't stop quite as early as had been intimated before. He was having a conversation with teammates Jamie Campbell-Walter and with Lawrence Pierce, the Lister boss, earlier on, and he really said, I want to be in first, I want to be in before the Viper, I want to be in before the other Lister and let them pit together. And that's not the way it happened. The Viper came in first, the second Lister came in second, and they were both still stationary when Julian Bailey had to arrive to hand over to Jamie Campbell-Walter. So not quite the way it was originally planned, but still it looks as though the 14 car is out front. Stop and go penalty, that'll be for speeding in the pit lane for Mike Hasemans and David Hart. Well, they're only garage number 3, so it looks as though Mike Hasemans is the man who's been caught on the speed guns rather than David Hart on the exit. So a big disappointment for them. This brand new car for the team, and they have got themselves a 10-second stop and go penalty. So from 2nd place they will drop down the order. They may even go beyond 3rd place. Behind the better of the in fact they will almost certainly go behind the better of the Belmondo Vipers. because it's going to take them some 30 or 40 seconds just to run down the pit lane in addition to their normal lap time, because there is a 60-kilometre speed limit enforced in the pit lane. 27.7 on the racetrack. The difference between Bailey and Campbell-Walter, between Campbell-Walter rather and David Hart in their respective cars. And here in the battle of the yellow cars, the number 51 car, the Michel Neugarten machine, being passed by one of the Belmondo Vipers. Well, that wasn't a class battle at all, but the class certainly being very shaken up all over the place. At the moment, Tim Sugden leading the NGT category from Magnus Wallander in the other yellow Porsche, and they are 8th and 9th overall. And how come they've gone so far up the order? Well, the NGT cars are going to run for about an hour and 20 minutes before they stop. Then there will be something like a 20-minute splash and dash. That's the plan for the Sugden and O'Rourke car at any rate. And then he will come back in and hand over for the final hour and 20 minutes to his teammate Steve O'Rourke. Looking at the car now that Mike Hasemans has only just handed over to David Hart. Hart barely a couple of laps out of the pits. He's been given that 10-second stop-and-go penalty. The team will have been notified. In fact, on the timing screens it says it's for crossing the white line at the pit exit. Blending onto the racetrack too early was what the penalty was for. So it wasn't Hasemans making a mistake with the car coming in on the speed restrictions. It was in fact David Hart being too eager to get back onto the racing line as he exited the pits. He crossed the white line that separates the pit exit road from the racetrack before it ended, and that is the reason that he has been given his 10-second penalty. Now, on the graphic on the screen, it showed it as a stop and go, which means it will not be added to his time. It means he has to come in and serve his penalty, which means it's not just 10 seconds, but something more like a minute will be added onto his race time. Here's the battle then for NGT honours. Tim Sugden in the EMI-sponsored car, the MK Porsche number 56. Behind him in the Pennzoil Quaker State Slick 50 G-Force racing car is, well, one of his nemesises from last year's British GT Championship, Magnus Wallander, the Swede who drove for the G-Force team in their GT1 class Porsche 911 last year. And look at that, 1.9 seconds between them at the line. I can't believe there's anything like 0.019 between them at the moment. Barely a car length between them. They've been caught by the second car on the racetrack, but they won't worry too much about that. Ernst Palmberger in traffic here in the number 4 machine. It's been the lucky car of Freisinger's pair. They have had to do pretty much nothing to it other than check levels and fluids, adjust the settings to suit the drivers and give it the odd polish. The 3 car, however, has been in bits more times than the mechanics have had hot dinners this weekend by some considerable margin. It's had a gearbox change almost every time it's run to get the ratios right. First the ratios were too short, then they changed into the long ratio box, and they could only use 5 gears because 6th was so overgeared they couldn't even select it on the straight without the car running slower. Then they changed back to the short-geared box and put in longer 5th and 6th. Once they got the gearing sorted out, the engine then started having oil leak problems in the morning warm-up this morning, and they had to change the engine, and it was then subjected to further ignominy when brilliant Bob Wallach, of all people, missed a gear change out on the back of the circuit, buzzed the engine. They came in and checked it. All the valves still seemed to be straight, but not too long after we saw the car being towed away from the side of the track. Didn't seem to have accident damage, which would rather seem to lend itself to the theory of long-term damage from Bob's buzzing. So that's the story of Freisinger's weekend. One you didn't even need to look at, one that was nothing but trouble. Well, nothing but exceptional turn of speed from the 2 Belmondo cars that are currently lying 2nd and 3rd, and for the drivers of the 3rd string Belmondo car, the number 10 machine, which is lying in 7th, pretty reliable race compared to their slightly limit overstepping practice sessions. Currently just ahead of the racing box Viper, the number 21 car, down in 19th place. And this is the car that runs second. Paul Belmondo at the helm, taken over from Vincent Vos. Belmondo looking neat and tidy as ever. Into the closing stages of this final round of the FIA GT final closing stages of this opening round of the FIA GT Championship for the year 2000. And that season ended fairly quickly, didn't it? Live on Eurosport from the circuit of the community of Valencia. As you can see on the time, just 5 minutes remaining inside the final five. 105 laps on the board, and they will get a chance to do in the next 5 minutes another 2 or 3. It'll be 3 by the time the checkered flag falls. And there is Jamie Campbell-Walter in the Lister Storm. And there is the car that is in second place, Paul Belmondo. Well, the timing screen showing them as 1.79 seconds apart at the line. However, the gap back to Jamie Campbell-Walter is 1 lap and 1.79 seconds. So Campbell-Walter has backed off to the extent that Belmondo is lapping 1.7 seconds quicker, or did on the last lap, than Jamie. He's down on a 1:37.1. Fastest car on the track still Mike Haseman's 1:35.4. He is really flinging in the fast laps in the 4th place. Viper, 28 seconds now behind Boris de Richebourg. De Richebourg 3 seconds a lap slower, but time is running out for Haseman's. Well, there with the red earphones on, Lawrence Pierce, the Lister team boss, checking the stopwatch, just making sure that everything is still running as smoothly as it should be for his number 1 driver, Julian Bailey. And Julian working his way through the traffic again. The headlights have been on since about lap 8 or 9 as they started to catch the back markers of this race, and keeping himself as calm and comfortable as he can. Viper coming up behind, and undoubtedly Belmondo will try and rattle the race leader if he can. Julian Bailey crosses the line with 3 minutes now to go. And that will give us just 2 laps to the checkered flag. Belmondo 0.7 of a second behind at the line. His teammate Boris de Richebourg 17.2 behind him. And Mike Haseman's in 4th place. The last lap round he was 28 seconds behind de Richebourg. He's yet to cross the line. There is the gap. As you see on the screens there, I'm telling you the gap on the racetrack, but the gap in the race is 1 lap plus 0.7 of a second to Belmondo. So Belmondo looks to be very threatening indeed to Lister at the moment, as we're on the last lap and a half of this race. But in reality, he could go past, and Julian Bailey could almost stop now and still walk back before the Viper made up its other lap. So it's been a pretty comfortable weekend for Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter. The car went as well as they wanted it to in practice. They were a little bit surprised by the speed of Mike Haseman's in the 25 car, but that didn't stop them setting the pole position lap, didn't stop Julian Bailey getting out and having a run to put pole position out of reach of the Dutch duo of car number 25. It hasn't stopped them leading the race from the first lap until now, coming on to the last. Julian Bailey onto the last lap, into the final corner for the last time, to the first corner for the last time at racing speed. Paul Belmondo right behind him. Belmondo thinks that Julian Bailey is going to be foxed into throwing the car off the road on the final lap with a single lap lead over the car right behind him. I think that Paul had better think again. Julian Bailey, far too experienced and far too wise a driver to go for that one. Jamie Campbell-Walter strolls across the pit lane, keeping himself topped up with fluids as he does so. To come to the pit wall, the crew are ready to rush across and welcome their driver. You saw Jamie Campbell-Walter there in the pit lane, so the on-screen caption, just a tad shy of the mark. 50-50 chance of getting it wrong, and I have to say I do more often than not, but in this instance, confirmation that it is still Julian Bailey at the helm. On his last lap, and with right behind him going for the photo opportunity, the car that is in second place, Paul Belmondo's Viper. It is shared with Vincent Voss. Boris de Richebourg in third place in the Belmondo Racing entry that he shares with Claude-Yves Gosselin. So it's Lister, Viper, Viper, Viper in fourth place, Mike Hazeman's and David Hart's car. And the best of the Porsches, Ernst Palmberger and Yuka Hirohane in fifth place. But for Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter, the checkered flag flies. It's the perfect start to the season for the Lister team. Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter take victory in the opening round of the 2000 FIA GT Championship. You can see there as he jumped down from the pit wall, Jamie Campbell-Walter with a broad grin on his face. There he is, Lawrence Pierce allowing himself a little smile even. And I'm sure Julian Bailey will be delighted inside the cockpit. And if they're yelling to him now, well done, I'm sure he won't be saying, don't talk to me now. It's all done. And they didn't get their 15 car to the finish. There's Nicholas Springer behind in the back of the shot there, one of the drivers of the 15 car. But they got their lead car not only to a finish on the podium, which was what Lawrence Pierce had hoped for, but the victory that it promised throughout qualifying. So, opening their championship score with maximum points, Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter and the Lister Storm team fulfilling finally the promise that they showed in their sporadic appearances in last year's FIA GT Championship. And the photo shows absolutely no challenge at all. And there is Jamie showing his delight as Julian crosses the line, and the team will be mighty relieved to get that one under their belt. It's not that they doubted themselves or their car, it's just that they really wanted the confidence that that will inspire. Lawrence Pierce will be very, very happy for his crew and his drivers. So 109 laps then, the race distance, and nobody else did 109 laps. Belmondo and Voss in second place on 108 laps. Gosselin and de Richebourg doing the bulk of the driving in that car and doing a very, very strong job indeed. He really is a very talented young man, 22 years of age. NGT class won by car number 52. Gosselin at the wheel as they cross the line. Wallander in second place in the car he shared with Robert Nern in the NGT class. And in fact, we were concentrating on the leaders in the last couple of laps, but Steve O'Rourke and Tim Sugden finished third in the NGT class. De Lesseps clearly had a problem or made a late pit stop because he has dropped right down into fourth place in the class, having passed O'Rourke on the racetrack. So Steve O'Rourke and Tim Sugden finished third in NGT. Julian Bailey and Campbell-Walter win overall.